Welcome to the Grand Affidavit. That's Grant.
And that's David.
That's not even how I was planning on working that one out. I was waiting for you to say hello or something along those lines, and then I was going to continue. But that's even better. Yes, that was staged. That was staged really well. Anyways, this is a podcast. I don't really know what this podcast is about. Do you know what it's about?
I haven't figured that out yet.
All right, we'll figure it out as we go. But anyways, we're going to just hang out and talk about stuff. There's really no agenda with this. But first, Grant, I wanted to... Do you go to the doctor regularly, like when you're feeling sick?
Well, I recently got new insurance, and by recently I mean like 18 months ago. And I was supposed to go and get a physical done, and I still haven't done that.
Yeah, well, there you go.
But I mean, if I'm feeling really sick, I'll go.
Yeah. Like, I don't know the last time I was at a doctor. It was a couple years ago. But I've been dealing with this cough and it's stuck around for about 2 weeks. I still have it. But do you guys have Buckley's in the States? I see there's things like
No,
that.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I mean, I remember it from up there.
Yeah, I mean, so I was like living off Buckley's, which is the worst thing ever. Anyways, finally my wife is like, you got to go to the doctor. So I finally went to the doctor because this whole time I'm thinking, I just got a cold, whatever. It's just lingering on. And the doctor's like, you actually have a lung infection and I'm going to prescribe you multiple medications. And I'm like, well, that's good. So that's what I've been living with lately. Just getting, prescribed which I didn't even, last time I went to a doctor was so long ago that I didn't even have at a local pharmacy like set up for my benefits or anything like that. I'm like, I don't know. I guess I'm going to pay for this and get it reimbursed because I don't know anything about my benefits except for claiming massage therapy. Anyways.
Yeah, I think the last time I had a prescription for like my physical being was when I threw out my back at like 27 years old.
Right.
That's a standard thing to do at 27.
I think so.
So they gave me muscle relaxers, and that was one prescription for that. 6-7 years ago.
Yeah. Like I honestly don't know the last prescription I had, but that's all right. We're here now. I'm still alive. I'm trying to fight the coughing fits, so I've got plenty of water. We'll get through this. Anyways, beyond that, let's get into what we're doing. This is the first episode of the Grand Affidavit, which is exciting. Every year I feel one of my New Year's resolutions is to start a podcast. And a couple of years I've done it. So there you go. That's one of those ones I can just check off my list. We'll see if this lasts more than 2 or 3 episodes, but for now, here we are. But we're going to talk about firsts because it is our first episode. So we got some ideas of just sharing stories. That's basically what this is going to boil down to, I feel. It's just sharing stories. So
I love just listening to you because you sound like a radio host.
A sick radio host at this point. So I'm just trying to bring, the caliber, the professionalism up to another level and drag you along with me. No. Okay, so firsts. First on the list of firsts happens to be your first kiss. I don't want to get too... This sounds like we're like starting a podcast for like 17-year-old girls. This is the first thing we're going to talk about, your first kiss. But do you?
Oh my God, have you had one already? Oh my God.
Do you remember yours? Assuming you have had one.
I remember it very specifically because I was rehearsing for a play when I was just moved up to there.
That's
so
Canada.
It was like the Conquest of Everest I was rehearsing. And so I was 16 or something. So I'm old.
Old, yeah.
And the person that I was co-starring with, her name was Shannon. I think it was Shannon. Yeah, Shannon. And the director's like, and now you two kiss. And then Shannon, I think, looked at me, and I looked at my eyes, and I was like, what the fuck's happening now? and so I was like, oh, okay. And then she's like, how about we go off stage real quick and practice this? And so then she just kind of like, she was 12th grader and I was a 10th grader.
Oh, man. Look at
11th
you.
grader.
That's swinging for the fences.
Oh, yeah.
First
so
kiss.
Then she just kind of like grabbed my shoulders and then kissed me really quick.
That's hilarious. My first kiss that I can remember, I was actually in grade 5. And so it wasn't one of those real kisses. It was one of those ones where on the playground, she was my quote-unquote girlfriend that week. And she kissed me. She then proceeded to steal my hat and run away. But my first, I guess, like if we want to say real kiss that I can remember, was actually in the back of my parents' car with my mom driving in the dark. It was really awkward when I think back on it. But you know what? That's what being a teenager is about, is being super awkward, right?
Totally. I mean, I was disappointed because my first one was a stage kiss, which a week later I went back to California and had my first actual kiss.
Oh, do tell.
So if I would have, it was before I moved up to Canada, I was getting really close to this specific girl named Katie.
Yeah.
So if I would have stayed down in California, she would have been my first girlfriend, my first whatever, probably a whole bunch of firsts. But if I would have pulled, I could have easily probably, she was in my French class, and I could have easily pulled the first kiss in 10th grade.
Right.
Easily if I pulled the trigger, but I was very shy when I was in California. And when I first moved to Canada,
yeah.
So I was like, I was super shy. I didn't want to do anything. But I remember that she and her friend were sitting beside me, and they made fun of me for something. And I said, you know how boring French class would be if I didn't say a word? And they said, oh, yeah, right. So for 2 weeks, I said nothing.
That's awesome.
Just to prove my point. And then after that 2 weeks, I was like, now what do we say? And they're like, yeah, it's way better when you talk.
That's funny.
So I went down there, and we kind of because we had both talked. It's like, it was horrible because online on AIM, or was it MS Messenger? They're interchangeable back then.
Yeah.
Except my AIM moniker was the Toxic Crusader.
I remember that name, like you using that, but I don't. Was that only on AOL Instant Messenger? You had that, or did you use?
Yeah, only on there. Because on MSN you could change your name to whatever you want at any time.
Right.
So I would imagine that maybe at some point MSN it just had the name the Toxic Avenger.
Right. Maybe.
Toxic Crusader. Yeah, I misremembered a movie when I was really young.
Oh, funny.
The Toxic Avenger. I misremembered it as the Toxic Crusader, so I picked that, and then I realized, weeks later, that it was actually Toxic Avenger, and I was very upset with myself.
That's funny. Okay, let's move on. First sports memory. Now, when we were kind of prepping for this, you talked a little bit and you shared like a professional sport memory, which was not you. You've never been a professional athlete. So let's talk about your first memory that was you playing sports.
That is such a very good question because it's so hard for me to remember the first one. Because
the first one that jumps to mind.
The first thing that jumps to mind. Does it have it? Okay, so does it have to be me playing a sport?
Well, what's your alternative to playing a sport?
Because I went to a professional golf tournament.
Okay.
Well, it was like a charity golf tournament my dad would be a part of at some point.
Right.
And do you remember Nitro, the American Gladiator?
Yes.
Well, I'm probably one of the only people in the world that has a baseball signed by Nitro, the American Gladiator.
That's awesome. No, that I think that counts.
I was like 6 years old, so I don't really know what's going on. And I was just like, "Do you want to sign my baseball?" He's like, "Sure."
Do you know?
So it's like right next to Wally Joyner, the great Angels first baseman.
That's funny.
And Nitro, the American Gladiator.
Do you know where the baseball is? Do you still have it?
No idea. It's probably in Canada somewhere.
You probably used it playing baseball one time. It got hit over the fence and some dog chewed it up.
Oh, Goliath.
My first sports memory that I can remember vividly is a baseball memory, and I was playing. And actually, it was it was our Little League championship that we made it to. We made it to the tournament, and we did okay during the season, well enough to make it to a final tournament weekend, and we ended up making it to the finals. And so we're playing, and normally I play second base, shortstop, and then I was also a pitcher. My dad was.
Are you good with your hands?
So good with my hands. My dad was the coach at the time, and we're bottom of the seventh inning, and I got to think how this went. But anyways, I was playing infield, and he makes a pitching change, and he puts me in, basically to come in as the quote-unquote closer. We're winning, bottom of the seventh inning, and get the first two. How did this work? First guy, he put me in because there was one guy that got on. We're winning by 1 run. And anyways, he ends up coming around, but I end up getting 2 outs. And then we get down to the... No, sorry, this is what it was. He's at second base. I get the first 2 outs. He stays at second base. Third batter comes up, and he fouls it off, and he fouls it off down the third base line. And I punch it from the pitcher's mound over to the third base line to try and make a play. I slide... and you're thinking this is going to be the moment where he makes the grab. It's heroic. It's a diving catch, but it goes off the end of my glove. And as I walk back to the mound, I just stare my catcher down because it's his ball and he didn't move on it, right? So I'm so angry at this kid. And
Did you shout into your glove?
What's that?
You ever see the closer shout into their glove?
Oh,
like
yeah.
Glove up to their face?
No, I just stared him down. Anyways, the very next pitch... They must have had runners on second and third because the very next pitch, he hit a bases clearing double, which gave them the winning run. And I was just not very happy. But the moments that stand out to me were me like staring down the catcher after, trying to make a sliding grab. And then very next pitch, giving up the double. Like, nah. And that was about
in my brain, the only thing that I remember, like the earliest memory of me playing is when I was, like Pee-wee T-ball. What I would just I just have this deluge of home runs that I hit going into each other.
Yeah.
Because I was a little bit ahead of my compatriots with the whole coordination thing.
Right.
So I'm like, this is like 6, 7, 8 in there. And I would just and at that time, if you basically hit it into the outfield with some hardness, you're getting a home run because it's going to be 17 throws before they get it in.
Yeah.
And all those are errors.
Oh yeah.
So that's the first memory is just a montage of home run after home run after home run for me.
I was going to say my first home run was exactly what you said. It was just errors. It was literally like a pop down the third base line sort of deal, and it dropped, and they overthrew it at first, so I went to second. They threw it to left field as I made my way to second, and then they overthrew third, and I rounded as I was rounding third, and then ended up scoring. So, I mean, it's not a home run by any stretch of the imagination, but I ran the bases and scored a run on one swing of the bat. So it counts. It counts. Okay, first time you snuck out of your house.
Here's a very boring story.
You never did it.
I never did it.
Oh, man. It's funny because I think I only did it twice. First time I snuck out was actually a friend of mine who lived a couple blocks over. And I don't know if you ever had these friends where your parents were like, you're not allowed to hang out with that kid. That kid is a bad influence. Well, this kid was one of the ones that my parents chose as a bad influence.
Was it the meth? It was the meth, right?
It was the meth, yeah. Fine, whatever. That's their choice. That's fine. But one day I saw him at school. He's like, man, can you help me? There's a construction site. We lived in a new neighborhood. There's a construction site, just down the street and a couple blocks over. I want to steal some lumber to make a skateboard box, right? And so he's like, will you help me do this tonight? I'm like, yeah, all right. And then he's like, I'll give you an Epitaph iron-on. So it was basically like an iron-on for a punk rock record label that I was going to iron on a hoodie. I'm like, yeah, cool. That sounds great. So we sneak out, and I'm so nervous because I've never done it before. And I'm like, for sure, someone's going to wake up at like me setting a toe outside my bedroom. One of my parents is going to come out of their room. Obviously, that never happened. I snuck out. We go down the street, and lo and behold, all the construction material is locked up. Right? Of course it is.
Because they're not idiots.
They're not idiots. And so it's like, well, can I have my Epitaph iron-on? I guess so. So he hands it back to me. We walk back. Never said anything of it again. Yeah, I don't know if he ever got the lumber to build a skateboard box or not, but that was the first time I snuck out. It was a good time.
I would sneak out of my bedroom and go watch Get Smart on my parents' TV in their bedroom because the house was pretty big when I was a little kid. So that's the extent of me sneaking out.
That's funny.
Me at age 10, slowly getting into the parents' bedroom to watch Get Smart.
That's funny. Okay, speaking of going to watch things, what was the first movie that made you search out more films, whether it was by that writer, by that director, by a specific actor?
It's easy. Usual Suspects.
Oh, nice.
Which is something that you recently watched for the first time.
Yeah. And so who was it about that movie that made you go out and
it would be the script of the whole thing. When they got to the point where they're revealing everything, and I was significantly younger than you when you first watched it.
Really?
And it just blew my mind. I was like, you could do that with stories?
Mm-hmm.
And so ever since then, I was a fan of, I always tracked down Christopher McQuarrie stuff.
Right.
Obviously, he's never lived up to what he did back then, but
fair enough. Yeah.
He was the writer for that. And, and Bryan Singer, when Bryan Singer was going to do X-Men, I'm like, oh, yeah, this is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
But I watched Amp Pupil because of that as well. When I was a little kid, that freaked me out. I don't know why people let me watch a Nazi movie when I was a little kid.
Why not?
Hey, when you're like, I love that movie, it wasn't that bad, Usual Suspects, and then all of a sudden you got Ian McKellen being creepy and Brad Renfro being Brad Renfro.
It's interesting because with The Usual Suspects, Kevin Spacey is an actor who I've gone out in the past and been like, I'm going to go watch a movie because Kevin Spacey's in it. And I learned something, is that Kevin Spacey can be in bad movies, but still be very good.
That's true.
And he can be surrounded by even good actors who are normally good actors performing poorly, and he's still good. But for me, the movie that did it, that kind of made me go out and search out more was almost multifaceted, because I went out and searched out more of a specific actor as well as a writer/director, and it was Mallrats. And so,
there you go.
I mean, the whole Kevin Smith web of movies, but then also with Jason Lee, who, when he did the whole My Name is Earl thing, I definitely ended up tiring out of his stuff. But still, that was the kind of the first movie that got me going, there's more like this out there. Okay.
I don't know if he still is, but he was a Scientologist for years.
Yeah, I remember hearing that. He was also a professional skateboarder, which is pretty radical.
But I was going to almost say, instead of Usual Suspects, I almost was going to say Dogma.
Oh, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Okay,
very close.
So we're trying to keep these episodes around 22 minutes roughly. So we're going to move on. So let's talk about the first time you can remember throwing up, if you can remember.
I'm waiting for you to go in the news at 5, fast the hour.
I don't
traffic,
do that.
Traffic, weather, traffic,
Yeah.
weather.
I don't do. I can do that, but I don't. So first time you can remember throwing up.
The first time I can remember throwing up is almost an impossible question. I can remember the first time that I remember throwing up, and in a completely embarrassing and horrible way.
Sure. I mean, obviously you would have thrown up before you could remember. I mean, babies throw up all the time. But yeah, so the first memory of you throwing, sure, in an embarrassing way, that works.
Well, it was the most. Literally the latest one or the earliest one I could think of was the first year of Red Deer College, and there's like 4 of us, and I was trying to date one of the girls that we were with and all this stuff, and then all of a sudden I run to the bathroom, instead of making it to the bathroom or the sink, it's just all over the floor.
Oh man! And was this at a house?
This is at the Tower dorms in Red Deer College.
Okay, funny.
And so all the floor looked like it was covered in paper mache, black paper mache.
Oh, jeez.
And for months, the girl that was I had a crush on kept going, it was black sticks. You threw up black sticks. And I was like, well, I guess this is done.
Before it even started. First time I can remember throwing up, I want to say about 4 or 5 years old. And this memory is kind of vivid to me. It was Halloween, and ate a ton of candy because that's what you do. And I was feeling sick.
Well, I had a responsible parent that wouldn't let me eat a ton of candy.
I was feeling so sick in the middle of the night, and I got up to go to my parents' room. Now, how this house was that we lived in, when you walked from our room that I shared at the time to my parents' room, you passed the stairs. Now, the stairs went downstairs, and you could actually, there was like a little railing, and it went down to, basically the stairs went down to the kitchen. I didn't make it to my parents' room. I threw up halfway down the hall and ended up throwing up through this railing, and it hit the floor in the kitchen, which was just linoleum floor, and it splashed back up onto the ceiling. So when my parents got up in the morning, they thought I made it, because then I also made it into their room and threw up on their bed because I was just an asshole, right? But in the morning, they found the vomit in the kitchen and on the kitchen ceiling. So that was a nice little surprise for them. I think they probably put a limit on our Halloween candy consumption after that, but I don't know why.
Well, if I would have had a traumatic version of that as you would have, then I would have totally remembered it. But yeah, that's the thing about childhood memories. It's got to be traumatic or amazing. Mundane doesn't really work out too well. Because I threw up tons of time mundanely. This one thing that I remember very vividly is my stomach hurt so bad one time.
Yeah.
And I couldn't throw up at all.
Oh, that's
and my mom tried to make me throw up.
Yeah. Oh, jeez.
Nothing would work.
Oh, man.
And I was just crying. I was like 7 or 8 years old. I'm just crying. My stomach hurt so bad.
See, I've only thrown up that I can remember, maybe like a handful of times in my life. So one was that one, and then like I threw up in grade 6, I remember, and I remember it because I threw up all over my bed. But then the last time I threw up was a couple of years ago, and I was thinking, like, before that I was like bragging, oh, I never throw up. Well, I got sick, and was to paint a perfect image, it was, coming out of both ends at once, pretty much. But as I was throwing up, I remember saying, like, in between like rounds of vomiting as my head is, hanging, I'm like, well, there goes 15 years. As I throw up more, like speaking to myself, because I was so proud of 15 years of. Well,
I can remember in high school you constantly talking about how it's been this many years since you threw up.
I probably updated every week. Anyways,
you have those giant signs like it's been this many days since the last accident at the office. Every day you wake up, you put a new little number up there.
Oh man, I had to hit my cough button there. Stupid chest infections making me laugh. Anyways, that's gonna wrap us up. We had so many more firsts, but we just have so many stories. We're gonna do firsts again sometime, but for now, we're hoping to do this. I don't know how often, whether it's twice a week, once a week, whatever. We're gonna get around to this. But Grant, real quick, if people want to find you on Twitter, but the only thing is, if they're listening to us right now, it's probably because they already follow you on Twitter. But redundancies aside, where can they find you?
Twitter.com/FejiManz, FEJIMANZ, or Z, depending upon what country you're in.
I appreciate that you carry over your Twitter tag from whatever this is podcast. That's fantastic.
It's almost my official sign-off now.
It's your catchphrase. It's a very boring catchphrase, I guess, but you got to think of something better. Bazinga. No, don't say bazinga. Why did I say that? Worst television show in history, maybe? I just quoted?
Pretty much, yeah.
We'll talk about that at some point, too. Anyways, if you want to follow myself on Twitter, it's at sing_victorious. As well, you can follow us. You can follow us, both of us, at the same time on Twitter, simply by following at Grand Affidavit. You got to figure out how to spell it yourself, though. But that'll do it for us for this time. So,
wait, do you even know how to spell it off the top of your head right now? I don't.
Oh, I do. Yeah.
I can do grand, and then the affidavit, I get lost.
Well, grand is your part, so that's fine. I've learned how to spell my part. AFFIDAVIT. Now someone's going to fact check that and be like, he's wrong. You made a spelling mistake. Anyways, that's going to do it for us. So bye.